The Perodua Alza has been around for over a decade. It is a nameplate that Malaysians are familiar with, and they know that it is synonymous with practicality, reliability and versatility. So when it came to the second generation Alza, Malaysians were so excited. So much so, in fact, that as of today, we still can't get a media review vehicle. So we borrowed one from a viewer, a friend of the channel, who has lent his showroom new Perodua Alza for us to tell you all about. My name is ABDULLAH, this is Malaysian Motoring, and this is our review of the 2022 Perodua Alza. Now, to start talking about the Perodua Alza, obviously we have to start with the exterior. Now at the front, we now get perhaps the boldest interpretation of Perodua's grille yet. Now replete with these gloss black L-shaped elements which do look very upmarket. Flanking them, of course, are full LED headlights with scrolling indicators and adaptive high beam, which means that for the H and AV models, this car can run with the high beam on, and the beams will adjust themselves to ensure that you get full beam where necessary without blinding other road users. Down below, we get LED fog lights right in the corners, and overall you get a very bold and wide face that looks a lot more assertive. Now, before we move to the profile, I would like to talk a little bit about Perodua's engineering know-how. Now, unlike our ASEAN neighbours that get the Daihatsu Xenia, the Toyota Avanza and the Toyota Veloz, Malaysians are actually known for driving faster than more of our neighbours, and as a result, things like high-speed NVH are of a greater concern, which is why the Perodua Alza gets these little fins right here, designed specifically for it to ensure smoother airflow over the front end and around the corners. This is again to help with NVH, which in this car is quite impressive, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, before we talk about the profile of the Perodua Alza, I would like to apologize for the dirtiness of this car because the weather has been atrocious, and frankly, I do not have the time, patience or money to have the car washed every 2 hours or so. Now, moving on to the profile of the car itself, this car rides on 16-inch dual-tone alloy wheels wrapped in Toyo Proxys CR1 tires, and what I find very interesting about the design of these wheels is that the Perodua logo in the center cap is black. Okay? Now, looking at the profile of this vehicle, there are two things that immediately stand out to me. One is the character line that starts from the headlights and carries on all the way to the tail lights, which I think looks rather nice. The second bit is actually this chrome line, which is exclusive to the AV model, which begins here at the A pillar and goes all the way to the base of the D pillar, which I think makes this car look rather smart. Then, of course, you have the flared wheel arches, a first for an Alza, designed to make the car look more stable and hunkered down on the road. Now, while we're here, I'd like to talk about the keyless entry system. Now, in other Peroduas, they used to use a button system. The Ativa was the first one to introduce this touch-based system, and on the Alza, we also get the same. Unfortunately, the touch sensor is only available on the driver's door and is not available on any of the passenger doors, which is slightly irritating. Also, because of Perodua's smart entry feature, it means that you have to press this touch panel twice to unlock all the doors, which, because it's a touch panel, requires a little bit of time as opposed to just tap tap like you used to on the Perodua MyV, for example. But again, I am nitpicking. Now, from the side of the car, I do admit that there are some people who will feel that this car is slightly under-wheeled, especially when you consider that the Toyota Veloz, which shares a lot of bodywork with this car, runs on 17-inch alloy wheels, which seem to fill up the arches a little bit better. Now, personally, I don't mind the 16s because design-wise, I think they look fine, and more importantly, they are cheaper to buy replacement tires for, and because of the thicker sidewall, it should mean that you get a slightly more comfortable ride. Now, at the back of the Alza, you will find a very bluff rear end, naturally to improve interior space, but more importantly, there is a lot of complex surfacing on this car to make the rear end look a little bit more interesting. It is worth noting that this panel here is black on all cars. It's hard to tell because this car is in elegant black, or perhaps right now slightly dirty and dusty black. But in any case, it does look rather smart, and unlike on the Toyota where you get the model designation here, we just get the sweet little Alza logo here along with the model designation. Now, what is a first for Perodua coming with the new Alza are full LED taillights, because here not only are the indicators LED, but so are the reverse lights, which I think are rather cool. The other big thing with the Alza is the improvement in practicality. The tagline for this car is versatility redefined. One of the big ways they did that was to improve practicality in the boot, if I can find the boot release. Now, with the third row seats up, there is a 100% improvement on space back here. With these rear seats up, you can get enough groceries for a family of 5 for a week without issue. In fact, there was even some leftover space. And that is again with the third row up. You can fold these down and then you get a lot more space than ever before. So for customers who look at a MyV and say, maybe there's not enough space, and think the same thing in an Ativa, well, now you have an answer. And folding down the rear seats is really easy. You just have to pull on these tug tabs here, and not only can you adjust the recline angle, which I did accidentally, you can also just fold the seats forward and they sit flat in place, replete with this little panel here to cover up the gap for the hinge. This is, as far as I'm concerned, intelligent design. And it just goes to show that Perodua means business when it comes to their cars. Now, let's move inside, where there are a lot more Perodua firsts to explore. Now, inside the Perodua Alza, with the engine off, it can be quite warm, so I'm going to leave this door open. Now, the interior design of this car is very upmarket, at least at first glance. In terms of the material quality, well, it's Perodua, so there's a lot of plastic here that is rather unforgiving, but you do know that this car will last the test of time, because Perodua thoroughly test their vehicles in order to survive the sort of nonsense that comes with family life. And family life is exactly what this car is designed for. But the overall architecture in here is, like I said, upmarket. You have a dual tone dash design with a black top and a brown lower. You also get some silver trim, some chrome trim around the aircon vents, and it just looks really nice. Now, what I think is particularly intelligent is the fact that you now get a permanent cup holder on the driver's side, which is big enough for you to put your phone, should you need to put a iPhone here for you to show Waze, since this car does not come with Apple CarPlay, but only Android Auto. One for the Android boys. Now, the other intelligent thing is the other cup holder in this car is actually on the passenger side in front of the aircon vent, allowing you to keep your beverages cool, which I think, again, is rather nifty. Another thing that they've done with the new Alza is improve ergonomics. And one of the ways they did that was actually to raise the center console to allow you easier access to the gear lever. They have also removed, in this top spec AV model, the handbrake, which is now an electronic parking brake, which also enables some more ADAS features, which we will talk about later. Now, in the center console, you will find the EPB, as well as the lock and unlock buttons conveniently located in the middle so that a passenger can lock and unlock the doors as well. And on this model, you also get an armrest, which is rather large, and the 12-volt socket lives in here, which I think is kind of nice. And because of the design of the armrest, I can actually rest my arm on it. Kind of nice. Now, in terms of material quality of the seats, much ado has been made about the fact that the Alza AV does not come with leather seats as standard. Instead, this is a leather and fabric combination where you have black outside with this brown contrast stitching, which I think looks really nice, and brown inserts, and this lovely thatched pattern fabric in the middle. These seats are very comfortable and they are very supportive, and they even have a decent amount of lumbar support, which is new for a Perodua. Now, the reason why Perodua went this way is because actually a lot of customers quite like having fabric in their cars. The reason being, one, for sound deadening, so that sound doesn't echo so much in the cabin, and secondly, because of heat. When you enter a car with leather seats after it's been parked outside on a hot day, believe you me, you can sear your bum off, and that does not happen in this. However, if you do want a full leather upholstery system for this vehicle, you can get the Gear Up leather interior package, which will then cover these in leather. If you were playing a drinking game with the word leather, you'd be quite drunk by now. Now, I need to talk about technology because there is a lot in here, aside from the electronic parking brake. You obviously get single zone air conditioning, not climate control, and you also get a 9-inch infotainment system. Now, what is noteworthy is the H model also gets a 9-inch infotainment system, and it is the same system as used in the Perodua Alza. However, the 9-inch infotainment system available in the Alza AV is a different head unit, which offers, for the first time in a Perodua, say it with me, wired Android Auto. This is a much vaunted feature that everyone has been asking for, and I am so glad that Perodua has finally decided to fit it to this car, because it means that I can recommend this to a lot more people. In addition to that screen, there's also a screen in front of the driver, set up in the same layout as what you got from the Alza, but, and I may be wrong here, but it seems that the screen in the instrument cluster seems to be of a higher quality with better pixel density and improved refresh rates. I may be wrong, but that's what it looks like. The graphics at least look rather snazzy. They look like they've been updated ever so slightly, and I think it's quite cool. Now, the functionality in here is quite simple. You have all of the settings and options for the vehicle set in this instrument display, obviously not in the middle, and of course all of that is controlled via the left side spoke on the steering wheel. The right side spoke of the steering wheel controls your ADAS features, and the lower end controls your infotainment features like your audio adjustment and so on. There are two exceptions, however, on this lower spoke. On the right side, you have a drive button, which allows you to switch between power, eco, and normal modes depending on how you press the button. And on the left side, you now get a camera button, which allows you to access this car's 360-degree camera, which is available in a multitude of views. You can now get it to show right in front, you can show down the sides as to avoid curbing the wheels, you can even show multi-angles of the rear, again allowing you greater versatility with your Alza. Given the fact that a lot of Alza users apparently use their cars for business and trading, because this car is very cavernous, I can see how a system like this would be very useful in tight spaces. Again, Perodua thinking ahead. Now, the traditional Alza buyer, however, is a family car. So let's go to the back to see how passengers would fare. Now, in the back of the Alza, it is actually a rather nice place to be. The material quality is still the same, and unfortunately you've lost some of the brown that was on the door cards earlier. Now it's just black, which is fine, I guess. But you do at least get cup holders in the door, which is nice. You also get a third cup holder here in the middle. But I need to keep talking about comfort. These seats are very, very comfortable because, as you can see, the seat base on this car does extend quite away. And because of the angle of the seat, it does mean that the majority of your weight is back here. So you can remain quite comfortable in this car even for long distance drives. Unfortunately, however, we have lost the much beloved teh tarik hook that we got from the Perodua MyV, which is sad. But at least you get two USB-A ports back here, as well as another feature that Perodua Alza buyers have been wanting, rear aircon vents, which you can control via a speed control here, and there are even little flaps here in order to direct the air to the second row, or if you can push them up, they reach all the way to the third row, which is much needed in our country. Now, these seats again help to redefine versatility because, number one, if you only have two passengers back here, you get a rear armrest, which I believe may be a first for Perodua. If you'd like to sit upright, you can adjust the angle like so, and if you'd like to snooze, you can adjust the angle like so. You can't see me, but I'm still here. And in addition to offering two ISOFIX mounts on either side, you can also slide these seats forward quite away, and when you're sat like this, which is perhaps less than ideal, you can actually tuck your feet in underneath the seat in front, and because this seat is actually set slightly higher than the first row, I still get an excellent view out. Now, if I push this all the way back, which is about here, you can see that I have absolutely acres of legroom, which is aided by the fact the rear of the front seats rather, are slightly scalloped in order to maximize knee room. And of course, headroom is of no concern at all. So again, versatility is the name of the game with this car, which is further evidence in the third row. Now, in the third row of the Perodua Alza, with the seats set as where you saw it earlier, sort of in the middle of the range, I still have a lot of space because I can tuck my feet in underneath the row in front of me, so I have plenty of foot room. And in terms of knee room, well, it's a bit of a squeeze, but if you can negotiate with the passenger in front of you, you can get a lot more space. Now, in terms of overall comfort, well, the backrests are rather nice and you can recline them should you want to get even more comfortable. And of course, I do have access to the aircon vents, which means I should be comfy in here for at least about an hour or so. I also have a 12-volt socket up here, which refuses to flip open, which should allow me a decent amount of comfort. In terms of overall practicality, you can definitely tell that the Alza has been improved in every measurable way. The fact that you can now sit 3 adults in this car without issue, the fact that you now have more space and more versatility than ever before means that this will appeal to a lot more customers. It is a great car. Of course, I wouldn't advise putting adults back here for too long, and unfortunately there are no ISOFIX mounts back here, so smallest passengers have to sit in the second row, but overall it's still a versatile space. But the versatility continues behind the wheel, so let's go over there. Now, like I said earlier, one of the big changes to the Perodua Alza comes in the form of the powertrain. So out goes the old D-VVT engine and now comes in a new Dual-VVTi engine, like the one that we've seen from the Perodua MyV as well as the Perodua Arrows. And mated to that is a Dual-CVT automatic gearbox with power sent to the front wheels. It is worth noting that this engine has been up-tuned ever so slightly compared to the outputs seen on the Perodua MyV, which should give this car a little bit more pep and a little bit more verve. But ultimately, what the Alza has always been is a versatile, multi-purpose vehicle that appeals to both families as well as people looking for a larger car with a bit more space to haul stuff around. And where the Alza used to fall short was in 2 areas, which was NVH, noise, vibration, and harshness, as well as safety. So let's talk about that first. Now, the new Alza is miles better than the car it replaces. There is a lot less road noise from before. That might be due to the tires, but I also believe that a decent amount of sound insulation was used in this car in order to ensure there was less intrusion into the cabin. And then on top of that, you now have this engine, which admittedly in the MyV is not the most refined or quietest mill in the world, but somehow in the Alza, perhaps because of its design, it feels as if the engine is very far away. So even when you do have to rev it out a little bit, and admittedly the car will make itself heard, the engine will make itself heard when you rev it hard, it always feels like it's very far away. So the noise is remote and somewhat isolated from the cabin. And in day-to-day driving, it really isn't intrusive at all. This is also helped by the fact that the D-CVT gearbox ensures that you're always at just the right RPM in order to get just the right amount of torque that you're looking for. What is also more impressive, because the old Alza also was quite impressive in town, what's even more impressive is this car's NVH levels out on the motorway. At 110 kilometers an hour, this car will do between 1,900 RPM and 2,100 RPM, depending on gradient and so on and so forth. And as a result, it means that this car moves along quietly. There is a little bit of wind noise, I will admit, coming from the A-pillars as well as from this little quarter light just at the furthest front part of the driver's side window. But aside from that, there really isn't that much to go on. Of course, if you push past that speed, I would imagine that there would be more wind noise. But because this car was lent to us from a viewer the day he received it, we're still going through the running in period, and so we didn't exceed 110 kilometers an hour. But also, given the fact that the national speed limit is 110 kilometers an hour, you shouldn't exceed it either. Then there's the second matter, which is safety. Now, the old Alza was pretty easy to beat, given the fact that yes, while it came with ABS and EBD and so on, it also only had 2 airbags, and that was it. Now, the new Alza range comes as standard with ASA 3.0, also known as Advanced Safety Assist 3.0, which includes things like autonomous emergency braking with cyclist and pedestrian detection. It also comes with pre-collision warning, lane keep assist, and so on and so forth. But this range-topping AV now comes with several other features under the Perodua Smart Drive Assist umbrella. These things include adaptive high beam, which is also available in the H model, as well as automatic high beam, which you get on the X model. You also get things like blind spot monitoring, lane centering, adaptive cruise control, now with stop and go function, meaning that this car can drive, or rather do most of the work through traffic jams. And because of the lane centering assist, it does mean that this car basically offers level 2 semi-autonomy. This is, of course, very impressive for a vehicle at 75,500 ringgit. And when you combine that with this car's added practicality, the ability to seat 7 adults in this car very comfortably, and it just makes it a very difficult package to take issue with. Of course, if I wanted to nitpick, and I really do mean nitpick, I would have appreciated if the USB port for the head unit was integrated somewhere into the dash, such as, for example, in this little pocket on the side of the transmission tunnel on the driver's side, rather than up here on the dash, because it means that I have to have an ugly cable dangling from my dashboard down to wherever it is I choose to put my phone. I would have also appreciated more USB ports in the front. There is only one USB port on the passenger side, again in that center console tunnel, and that's it. Anything else, you would need to use the 12-volt socket which is in the center armrest, which I find again a little bit odd. And lastly, again, if I wanted to nitpick, the adaptive cruise control system in this car feels kind of crude. It's not nearly as smooth as what you get from other car makers. Forget luxury players, or even mass market car makers like Toyota with Toyota Safety Sense, and also Proton with its ADAS suite of features. I feel like further refinement needs to be made to Perodua Smart Drive Assist's adaptive cruise control features, especially in terms of how it modulates the throttle and the brake. It's also very jumpy, which means that if a car were to cut you off within your preset distance, and admittedly even the smallest or shortest preset distance is still quite considerable and enough for a vehicle to cut in front of you relatively safely, the car will sort of react in a panicky kind of fashion. It reminds me of getting into a car with a learner driver. It's not fun. And it probably irritates the people at the back as well, because they think that you're braking for no reason, and that surely can't be good. But that said, even though the ACC needs a little bit more polish, again, at this price point, this is the only 7-seater MPV to offer this level of active safety. Not the Honda HR-V, not the Mitsubishi Expander. None of those cars offer the same degree of safety and practicality, especially at this kind of price point. So all in all, warts and all, the Alza is still an excellent car to live with. Would I recommend this? Absolutely. If you think that a Perodua Myvi is a little bit too small for your needs, and an Ativa isn't really quite what you're looking for, or if you have a lot of friends and you guys like to go and jalan-jalan cari makan on the weekends, then the Perodua Alza is perhaps the best car for you at under 100,000 ringgit. But if you want something that drives a little bit better, don't buy an MPV. And if you want something that has a little bit more pep and a little bit more verve out on the road, don't buy an MPV. This is an MPV, and so you ought to evaluate it as such, treat it as such, and when you look at it through that lens, it is absolutely excellent. I'd like to take a moment to quickly mention two people. One, I'd like to very much applaud the team at Perodua, especially the engineers and designers that are permanently stationed in Japan that worked with Toyota and Daihatsu to develop this vehicle, because among other things, the new Alza does a very, very good job at sort of removing the dull, uninspiring image that used to plague, and in fact still plagues, a lot of MPVs today. And I'd also like to take a quick moment to shout out the owner of this vehicle, who handed the keys over to this car to us with only 50 kilometers on the odometer. To say it was new would be putting it lightly, and as you can see, all the seats are currently uncovered, and so I have to put all the plastic back shortly. In any case, that has been our very quick first review of the new Perodua Alza. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon to be notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We will catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe, jangan bodoh.